Mr. DeSalle bets credits to Navy beans. The cat is the most ruthless, most terrifying of animals as far back as the saber-toothed tiger. And Korob gets killed by a door. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Sirach Lofton and Walter Keonig.
Hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we're doing a review, you guessed it, of Star Trek Season 2, Episode 7, Catspaw. Teleplay by D.C. Fontana, written by Robert Bloch, directed by Joseph Pevney. This was October 27th, 1967. Where were you? You were probably preparing your costume to look like this for Halloween. How you guys doing today?
Good. This episode is notable in my life because it was an extrapolation of lines that I auditioned with for Star Trek. This was the episode that they gave me to read.
You still recognize these lines, Walter?
No, these lines are not when the lines in the episode were not in the audition piece.
Okay.
The only thing that was similar was that I was on this ship and Captain Kirk was not there. And that was in the episode. But the character was named Jones. And at the time, I thought it was very arbitrary. I realized afterwards that they probably were referencing Davy Jones.
Yep.
Since that's who they were looking to replace or to substitute.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Jones.
Yeah, Jones with a Russian accent.
Yeah, with I was gonna say, that was my next question. Like, how is that possible?
Unless it was supposed to be Jonesky.
Well, I believe the reason is, if the lore is correct, that, the monkeys were the thing and they were bringing you on to be the young heartthrob. So they wanted to give you the Davy Jones look with the Davy Jones hair, and you were kind of presenting as that character. And is this true, Walter? This was the first episode you shot on. It's episode 7, but if we go in production order, this would be the first one. Is that right?
That's right. It's the first one that we shot.
What are your memories of it? It's almost 60 years later, if any.
Almost nothing. I knew that I was on the ship. The dialogue was totally different from what I had auditioned with. I have no memory at all of the person with whom I spoke as the character. It was, painless. I don't think, I think it was only one shot, or 2 shots at the most. And then I was done. I did think that since they were thinking of having me as a recurring character, why didn't they name me? Why didn't they give my character a name? Call him, maybe because they hadn't actually decided on it, except by now I had been cast. So they must have decided on it.
They didn't call you Chekhov in this episode?
No, they did
I
not.
Didn't notice
It bothered me because this captain, that was the acting captain, when referring to you, says, he calls you Mr. Hey, Mr., what's the... give me, the rating on. So he called your character Mr.
Yeah.
Didn't address you by name.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So my question, Walter, is: so this is the first episode you filmed, and you're on the set, and you're working with a temporary captain who I don't know if we see this guy again, and maybe we do, but I don't know this guy. He's not really known. So what was the temperature like working where you didn't really have the main 2 characters aboard the bridge working alongside you at this time? You're essentially outranked, in acting terms, the guy who's the captain in this particular case.
Oh, I didn't think in those terms. I didn't know. For all I knew, he was a regular,
Yeah.
I just did the scene with him, and that was pretty much it. It was not memorable on any level. It was not memorable, but it went satisfactorily. I didn't screw it up. So I guess I felt okay.
There was some memorable line in there. I liked when you said, "I can do it, sir. I'm not that green." Like,
Yeah. That's when I
that was
realized.
memorable to me.
That's when I realized.
Did I
It's
say
like,
that in this episode?
Yeah.
I did
Yeah.
say that in this episode. I'm
Yeah.
not that green. Because
Yeah.
that line I remember. Huh. I didn't hear it.
It was maybe your second scene, right? It was the second scene. Like first, you're kind of introduced. Maybe you're asked to do something, and then you kind of had like your introductory moment. I felt like that was the moment where they're saying, "Hey, everybody, here's this new character. He's going to be that, he's going to be that kind of like underdog young guy that people root for." Because first you kind of got this guy that's like, "Hey, if you need some help, let me know." That's what he said. And he said, "I can do it, sir. I'm not that green." And right there, we get the introduction of the kind of character that they are trying to present. The young guy, the new guy that's got spunk, that can do it, It's too bad you missed it. That was that was kind of like that one line introduction.
Yeah. That's a personality line. You're right. Yeah.
Personality line. So you say you didn't know that this actor that you're working across, and I Ryan, if you can, while I'm blabbering, if you can pick up his name, because this guy who plays Mr. DeSalle, he did have a kind of a prominent role in this, because all of a sudden he's ranked up to captain. He's somebody we haven't seen before, but since everybody's away, he's, I guess, he's the next in line in charge. And so my question is, again, you mentioned you didn't think that he was anything else but a regular. You're coming onto a set, you don't know who's there and what's what at that time. What was the introduction like when you got on the set? Who kind of walked you in and said, "Hey, this is where we have the commissary. This is where we, the Bay Craft Service," and and was there anybody that kind of put their arm around your shoulder?
The owner of Gulf and Western. No, I'm screwing. No, I have no memory of it. Since that, I didn't. I guess, as evident from the photography, I didn't even meet any of the other folks. Any of the other regulars. It was like they said, "Oh God, this guy's coming aboard. Let's go down." Let's not be around. So it was very. It felt very insignificant, but I felt, I succeeded. I did what they asked me to do, as small as it was, and so I felt okay. And I anticipated that I'd be doing other shows, which they told me I would. But that's something they tell you when they offer you little money.
Yeah.
And the money is short, but we'll have you back.
Great opportunity.
Yeah, right.
Well, lots of publicity. This will be great for your career. So you're like, you didn't fully believe it. You thought, hey, it'll be nice if that works out. But
I wasn't being cynical. Look for the rainbow. I was hoping that it would turn out that way.
Okay, so please forgive us, Walter, that we're asking you so many questions about something that happened almost 6 years ago that you barely remember. But this is very interesting to us, and this is really big in the lore of Star Trek. This is the first time you were on set. This is the first. Okay, here's what's strange about it. So it's an introduction to your character, but it's in episode 7. So it's like in the 5th or 6th episode that you appear in which you appear, I should say. And that's why there are some podcasts, there are some people that review these shows in production order, because then they can kind of see a little bit of a character arc. Mostly in Star Trek, unnecessary. But in this case, I can see the value in this, because if we had recorded this one first, it would be more obviously an introduction to your character to us. because it would be the first time we see you. Was there anything ever at any point that you remember with regards to production order or getting confused about what's coming up next, or maybe this episode is just way too complicated, so they're pushing it back a couple weeks and they're rushing this one?
Well, you make an interesting point, which had not occurred to me till now. Perhaps the reason why they didn't identify me with a character name is because I was not under contract. If they decided after watching this first episode that I was bombing and that they didn't want me, it would have been easier, I suppose, simply to ignore it. It was just another, face in the crowd. So that might have been the reason why I didn't have a character name, because they were not obligated to bring me back. And that they did was the reason why they ultimately gave me a name.
Yeah, the other thing that kind of comes to mind when you say that is the order in which they release the episodes. And my thinking is, if they're going to release the episodes, if this is the first episode filmed, but the 7th episode released, and they know that they're going to be mixing up orders, then maybe they don't want to give a name yet because they're not sure where that continuity is going to be established.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anyway, so before we go on more into this episode, Walter, is there anything else you actually remember from back then? Do you remember talking to Nichelle? I mean, she was the first regular or recurring character that you actually met. You didn't realize that DeSalle wasn't, although I did look him up, Sirach. But we could talk about that in a minute, because I would just sidetrack us. Do you remember any of that? Saying hi to Nichelle the first time you guys actually met? Do you remember that moment of meeting her?
Well, that's curious, because that's exactly who I remember meeting first, was Nichelle. And she came over to me, and I don't remember the dialogue verbatim, but it was something about, where are the birds hiding in your hairpiece?
She made a nest joke?
Yes.
That leads to my question, and that was your makeup and hair, going through that and testing with that, and also wardrobe fitting. But do you remember those first kind of moments when they were getting your hair right for this episode?
Well, after I read, and I had to change the reading, to make it funny, they asked me to hang out. They didn't tell me to go home. They didn't say thank you very much. They just asked me to hang out in the outer office. And then they grabbed me and they said, come with me. And I think I went with Fred Phillips, who was the makeup man. And we went to Max Factors on Hollywood Boulevard. And we picked out 3 wigs, a blonde, a brunette, and a redhead. 3 women's wigs. Because my hair was very short at the time. I had just finished making my own movie. So I came back and I tried them on. And then the 5 people in the room, including Joe Pevney, who was the director of this episode, they all tried them on. And they were all running around the room, laughing hysterically, trying on the wigs. So I said, my God, to myself, I said this, if they make this an unpleasant experience for me, I'm going to tell the world that these guys run around ladies' hair.
Blackmail.
I didn't have to do that. So that's the only thing I remember. And then Fred was great. Fred Phillips was terrific. Especially, he had wonderful stories to tell. He had stories that I think went back to at least the 30s when he was a makeup man, and he had to put makeup on naked ladies in the film that he was working on. And I said, God, Fred, you've got to write a book with all the stuff that you've done and who the people you work with. I didn't say this immediately, but I said it somewhere down the line. And he says, nah, he felt he would be betraying private information if he did, which I thought was the whole point of writing a book.
So everybody stay tuned for Walter's memoir coming out soon, where he tells all.
No, I was good. I wrote my memoir and I didn't come down hard on anybody. Anyway, so Fred was terrific. He was on my side from the very beginning. And when my hair grew back, and I use quotes around that because it didn't grow back as strongly as it should have, and I was starting to lose it, he got this spray out that he sprayed the back of my head, which made it look thicker and it covered the bald spots. By the way, he also sprayed the back of Jimmy's head, and he sprayed who didn't need it, but he had a very interesting place where the hair all came. Leonard, he sprayed the back of Henry's head. He had a little spot, but it wasn't the bald spot. It was just where all the hair came together. It came together like that. So
Howell kind of thing, yeah.
Yeah. So he sprayed Leonard's head too.
All right, Vulcan secrets.
Yeah. Walter, you mentioned going over to Max Factor, and I just didn't understand, and this was new to me when you said that it was a facility in which actors would get, made up for roles. And is that what Max Factor was working alongside the studios? Was it a subcontract thing, or how did the Max Factor play roles with the studio?
My belief was that it was its own independent business called Max Factors on Hollywood Boulevard.
Yeah, Hollywood and Highland, I think.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Yeah, it's as people who are from LA know it because it's a very famous building, the Max Factor building. Growing up in LA, I remember passing by it a lot, but I didn't know the history behind how it was directly playing an involved role in Hollywood.
I mean, the whole thing, when you think about it, was so kind of casual. They hadn't planned it in advance. They didn't know that if they were going to cast me, and if they cast me, that I would need a hairpiece to make me look more like the Monkees' young man, Davy Jones. So when you consider how it all transpired and the fact that they didn't actually tell me that I had got the role, that the wardrobe guy told me, and then you consider the next 60 years, as you say, and how. And it went on a path that I could never have anticipated for me, a career path and a life that I could not anticipate. It's all very peculiar, very almost feels coincidental that it all worked out. And that's one of the lessons to be learned. There are people who, start taking dance lessons when they're 4 years old because they're determined to be dancers or performers when they're older. With me, it just sort of happened. This moment, I had been working. I had done a bunch of shows, but I had no idea that my life would be so ultimately changed for 6 or 7 decades.
Wow. Yeah, and here's the good news. We got a fun episode to talk about too.
Yes.
So I feel like a lot of this was, for me personally, this wasn't the best episode I've seen. So that's why this is great that we have all these other stories, there's other things to discuss and all that. We can really go deep into that. However, something I noticed about this episode, a couple things. One is they mentioned wizard, right? So we're already thinking about wizardry, which piques my interest. And it made me realize that these original series episodes were not science fiction in the way that we think of science fiction today. Today, when we think of science fiction, it's very science heavy, the science part of science fiction, or at least it attempts to be. This had a lot of fantasy, a lot of lore, a lot of mythology. You know, there's a lot of blending of those kinds of things. It takes place in space, and it is, you know, in the future. But there's a lot of, you know, we had Greek gods kind of things. We've had, you know, magical beings. Now we have wizards and black cats and Halloween. And of course, October 27th, this came out. You know, I should have thought of that sooner, but there's a reason maybe why it was delayed until then. But that was just something I noticed. What do you guys think?
Well, what I noticed, I'm sorry, go ahead. You were
No.
What I noticed, that the first death is not in a red shirt.
Ooh, Walter keeping tallies.
The guy beams back up and falls down is in a gold shirt.
Yeah. Good observation.
I
didn't even notice that.
I thought there was a preponderance of dialogue. I thought the dialogue went on and on and on. I'm not sure. I'm not saying that it wasn't necessary, but I was just aware of it. There's less action and a lot of dialogue. The mystery
dialogue
that was going on
led me nowhere. The dialogue didn't lead me anywhere in particular where it gave me this, you know, mystery or made this puzzle for me to solve. The dialogue really just was filling up space.
You know, you're absolutely right. And I wrote a note. Mystery of what's going on is not explained by the dialogue. So I became aware of dialogue as opposed to being informed by the dialogue. So that was a little peculiar. And the other thing, and these are all minor notes, the other thing was, you know, I can see them chaining Spock and Kirk to the wall for one shot, you know, but they kept putting him back on the wall. And I thought that was a little silly, you know. If you're going to keep incarcerating them, you can keep keeping them jailed. Find some other way to do it the next time. It just felt like it was there for the starkness of it or something, and it didn't add to the story.
Maybe budgetary reasons, you know.
They could have been held in it could have been a cell. The room itself could have been a holding facility. They could have just left them in that room and said, you're stuck in here until we let you out. It didn't have to be the chain up to the wall. I agree. I think it just became that makes it clunky. And then, you know, it's the large key that he had. I didn't know the Sulu had a key that would look like the old, Frankenstein keys or whatever. It just didn't seem necessary for me as well. The whole chained up to the wall aspect of it. I would have liked the character development better between these alien characters. It should have been more explanation about what their relationship is to each other. It could have been better for me. They could have been working together more, or the fact that they're fighting could have been clearer and better explained, or at least for what the reasons that there's a friction between the two of them. Either working together better or fighting together better. I needed more explanation of their relationship. It just seemed very haphazard and just the next thing. And that is his woman. It's not his woman. Is he setting up Kirk? Is he not setting up Kirk? The whole lingering in the background, watching the whole thing happen seemed awkward to me as well. It just didn't function like the story was missing a lot of stuff for me. It was clunky.
And also that whole seduction thing felt awkward to me. Of course, I had seen. Well, no, that's not the point. The point is that I've seen Captain Kirk, and I know that he's a hunk, and I know that the women are attracted to him. And that's the way we always sold him. We sold him as, there he is, guys. You know, this is the hunk. And when he's this and that, it felt, it felt awkward, number one. And that just may be me and my repressed sexuality. I don't know. But the fact that she buys into it for about 6.5 seconds and then says, no, you're screwing around with me. I thought that was the transition was a little short and a little too quick to happen. I mean, once you get those hormones going, it takes a while.
To simmer down.
I agree. Yeah.
Well, let's take a quick break. We got to take our break, but I feel like there's a lot more to talk about on this subject matter.
More.
I mean, I feel like this is the big one, is what she said. So here we go. We will take that break very quickly, and we will be right back on the 7th rule. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the 7th rule with Cirroc Lofton and Walter Keonig.
Hello.
All right, so we've got some trivioids this month, and they go a little something like this. Crewman Jackson collapses immediately after beaming in. Mr. Scott and Mr. Sulu are missing. 3 opera singers are obsessed with Captain Kirk. There's a cute black cat. Mr. Sulu and Mr. Scott are bewitched by a wizard. Kirk calls telekinesis telekinesis. The Enterprise bridge gets really hot. Mr. DeSalle bets credits to Navy beans. The cat is the most ruthless, most terrifying of animals as far back as the saber-toothed tiger. And Korob gets killed by a door. All right. So back to... there's a lot of stuff in there. Back to Kirk and the lady kissing for 6 to 7 seconds. What I felt was awkward about that was Kirk kind of was sliding his face across, or his mouth across her face back and forth. And all I kept thinking was, this poor guy is tasting her makeup. Because, in TV and television, we got to put a lot of makeup on, especially the ladies back in the 60s. And he just goes, doing all this. And I'm thinking he has got a mouthful of makeup. I can't be wrong in this, am I?
I never thought of it, but it sounds right.
I'm with Walter. We always talk with Ryan, and I've always talked about the believability of 2 people falling in love in one episode. Mm-hmm. It's a difficult thing to pull off where it's believable. You just met somebody and boom, you fall in love. Now it has to play right with the dialogue. The circumstances have to be right. The actors have to play it off properly. All the things have to be in alignment in order for it to be believable for a one-off episode. And in this case, this entity wanting to experience emotions, activated by this kind of scene that we're talking about with Kirk, and I didn't buy it. The way he was selling it seemed fake. He didn't seem interested in her really. It seemed like he was being fake about it. And even her reception of it seemed inauthentic to me. So all of those things didn't work for me. She mentioned she was attracted to the power. And that to me could have been a theme that they could have expanded upon. If it was power that was attractive to her, then Kirk could have used his resistance of these effects, fighting off Sulu, fighting off her husband, taking control, refusing to do something. All of those things could have been attractive to her. And therefore she could have said, the fact that you have this power, this machismo, this bravado, you won't submit to any of the tests. You won't bow down to my husband who's trying to wield his power on you. That power, this toxic kind of masculinity about you is what makes me attracted to you. And I would have bought that a little bit, because, that could have made more sense. So the more he resists, the more he fights to get away, the more she wants to be with him. That could have been a sense of attraction there. However, I didn't see the two of them seem to have initially been in some type of cahoots together. They look like they were both in on the same thing. The cat and the Dr. Evil guy. They seem to be both on the same page as far as whatever their mission was to accomplish as these alien entities. The fact that they diverge is what bothers me as well. Why did they diverge? These are two aliens that are trying to whatever, entrap these species to take away their knowledge or take away their energy or whatever it is. What would cause a diversion from that? Was it the jealousy? Was it jealousy from this other character? Was he jealous when he saw Kirk in this Sylvia character? I didn't see what caused the rift between them for them to be diametrically opposed to that degree.
Here. I also thought it was a little weird, and this is probably my last comment, because I was not very affected by this episode, I must tell you. But when she suddenly switches costumes, and one of them is totally absurd. It looks like a clown costume from the. I'm thinking, why? What are we achieving by seeing these sudden changes in what she's wearing? So that was my other question. And I know that you both understood it very, very well and can explain in detail precisely what was going on.
I'll tell you, the costume change, I definitely noticed. My favorite costume change, though, was this one, of course. That was a nice costume change when they turned into these little, I called them like, what are they? Chiquita quails. Like the Chiquita banana would have like the big fruit hat thing. And then like.
I know Chiquita banana so well that if you prompt me, I will sing the verse.
Please do.
Yes.
Chiquita banana, and I come to say, bananas like to ripen in a certain way when they are flecked with brown and have a golden hue. Bananas are the best and the best for you, but you should never put them you can put them in a salad, you can put them in a pie, and when you like to eat them, bananas can't be beaten, but never put bananas in the refrigerator. Oh, no.
Wow. Fun and informative. This is good stuff. Excellent. Okay, so I didn't mean to sidetrack us there. But yeah, definitely don't put them in the fridge. That's a true statement. So I felt like you guys both seem to say that there wasn't much to take away from this episode. I tend to agree, but it sure had a lot of potential for me. Because when I see this kind of story, again, with a wizard and a sorceress or whatever, there's a black cat. They're clearly doing a Halloween episode. Spock mentions Halloween. I also found it kind of strange that Spock seems to always know more about human lore than the humans. He tells Kirk and them, he's like, oh, this is like Greek mythology on Earth, blah, 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 blah. Oh, this is like a wizard on Earth. Oh, superstition on Earth. I'm like, do humans even pay attention to their own history? Actually, don't. I know we don't, but we should. But at least Spock does. I just found it like ironic that the outsider is the guy that always knows the human history.
Yeah. This episode could have been a lot better. I got vibes from this actor who plays. What's the name of this main magic guy with the wand?
His name
Uh,
is, let's pull him up. Oh, the character was
yeah,
Volcol. What was
the
it?
character.
He was a working actor, which I know his name.
Korob.
No, but I mean the actor's name.
Theodore Marcuse.
Yes, absolutely. Ted Marcuse did a lot of TV back in the day.
Yeah, he seemed, you know who he reminded me of? Sid Haig for a minute. I know Sid Haig is in one Star Trek episode. I can't remember which one it is. Really cool, well-known actor. But he kind of, for a second, I was like, whoa, is that Sid? But no, it's not. I'd never seen this guy before, but he did kind of transfer from the creepy, all-knowing wizard into more of a subservient type that was, a different kind of character. By the way, I did look up this one character that we were talking about, DeSalle. Michael Barrier played him. I thought it was his only episode. Turns out he was in 3 episodes. The first 2 were in season 1, and he actually just passed away this year in February. So he's 90 years old. Yeah.
So the red shirts or the gold shirts lived on. Actually, they live long and they prosper. No, this character, the Korob character, remind me of a person that I've seen before and read about, and I think it was loosely based on this. And this is just my guess. This is not me reading up anything or finding any. This is a guess of mine, and that is this character looks and reminds me and feels like a real life person that is named Aleister Crowley.
Yes, totally. Yes.
And this Aleister Crowley person also delved in the realm of magic and mysticism. And both the bald head is similar to that. Even the logo that's on the shirt that he's wearing, this kind of flames or rays of light coming out of the eye. All of these kinds of things remind me of the real life Aleister Crowley, who was into these kinds of ritual magic. And I thought that's where some of the storyline would end up going. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Kind of the dark magics and such.
Yes, exactly. And that's what it felt like they were going with this episode, was talking about these kinds of mysticism, dark magic, black cats, all of these kinds of, mythologies and trying to invoke magical things happening, the transfiguration of this cat into a person, all of these things I thought were in that realm. And with the castle and everything, it felt like they were going to go into this world of wizardry and magic more so than they did. It just, at the end, it was 2 little blue balls. So Kirk got blue balls.
What do you mean?
When they ended the last shot.
Yeah. So can I share with you guys something that this reminded me of early on? When we saw the 3 opera singers singing opera.
Yes.
But they were ugly.
Is that in this episode?
Yeah.
Yes.
They just showed up. They're like, Captain Kirk, Captain Kirk. And they were like clearly like good singers. But it definitely reminded me of the witches from Clash of the Titans. If you remember the witches from Clash of the Titans with the 3 eyes, or with the 1 eye between the 3 of them, that's what I thought of these guys. Give us the eye. He has the eye. These guys. But this Clash of the Titans clearly came out much later. It was like 1980 or 81. But anyway, there were so many things that felt like fantasy, wizards, witches, warlocks, magic, all these things. And I agree with you guys. It just didn't quite come together or coalesce. It could have been a theme about fantasy or a theme about power, like Sirach says, or a theme about, and Sirach, by the way, I wanted to add that I think you're right. I think that the writers intended power to be kind of something to this, like that, something to the lady character, Sylvia. I feel like it just wasn't explained as well as it could have been, but I think you're right. I think you hit the nail on the head with that there was something there with that attraction that made Kirk want to lick the makeup off of her face.
Yeah. They started to allude to it. I mean, even Spock had a line, which it was probably one of the first time I heard Satan being referred to in an episode of Star Trek. And Spock's line was referring to the cat, demons in animal form sent by Satan to serve the wizard. And I was like, oh, wow, this is getting into, like, all kinds of territory of black magic and wickedry or spell casting and all of this kinds of stuff. Demons. It could have easily have gotten into that a little bit deeper. And it didn't. And another thing is the hole that they fell into
was perfectly cut.
It was like a perfectly cut puzzle piece of a hole, and I'm thinking, what kind of hole is this? And how
magic?
Just all they had to do was just climb up on a chair. It just didn't. A lot of it just was like it was missing some congruent, steady line of, just even the fight scene. I don't know. What did you guys think of the fight scene when Sulu gets knocked out and McCoy's punched, and that fight scene with Kirk in the hallway?
It was very succinct. It was abbreviated. There wasn't much to it, one kick, and then the second time around he's on the ground,
Yeah. I always found it funny how in television they go, "What? He got punched. He's knocked out. Sulu got swung around. He must have fell 2.5 feet onto his butt. He's clearly knocked out. This guy got a door fall on him. He's dead." I'm like, wow, they really don't make people very strong in the future. Like, they're fragile.
When Sulu hit the door, I saw him kind of hit back into the door. He looks up and then he did one of those kind of old school karate knockouts where you look up real quick and then you like, okay, now I'm going to knock out.
Yeah. I will tell you one thing that was a consistent thing, constantly impressive to me, and I thought it was really good, was the musical score. This episode had a theme song basically, and they kept playing it, and it was really good. And I think that's what original series does better than any other series for sure, is each episode seems to have a theme that we recognize. So now to this day, if we heard that in a mall or at somebody's house or whatever it is, we go, oh, that's that Halloween episode. We immediately picture the cat and the wizard and things like that. I thought the music was great. What'd you guys think?
Yeah, if I can digress at least 180 degrees.
Yeah.
I couldn't sleep the other night, so I picked up my autobiography, and I had written a 3 or 4 page summary of what I thought the new movie should be about and how it should be. Well, they had a script. I think this was 2. Yeah, it must have been 2. And they had a script, and I saw a lot of. Okay, it's coming back to me. Bennett had asked me to do a Trekkie run on the script to find out things that were not consistent with what we had done in this series. So They were talking about aux power. We never talked about aux power. We talked about auxiliary power. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of tiny little things like that. And they had a sword fight between Khan and Kirk. And I said, what the hell is Khan doing with a sword? And besides, it's such a cliche. I said, what I could imagine as being very effective is a bare fist fight where you see the blows land, where you see the faces distorted, with the blood spurts, where it's a real pugilism. It's like out of one of the Rocky movies, or
yep, that's what I was thinking.
That I said would be very effective. Mano a mano, two guys fighting. Of course, they ignored it completely. And it has, as I said, has no context here, but I came to mind. So I don't know how many minutes we have, but I just decided to throw it.
We have 4 minutes, which means it is time for the home run of today's episode. What do you think, Walter?
I'm thinking of a bunt single, not a home run.
If there were a home run.
You first, Sarah.
I'm going to say that the home run of this episode goes to you, Walter. I think you deserve the home run.
Yeah.
I think you were the best thing in this episode. And I actually wanted to see more of your scenes than I wanted to see of this endless puzzle to nowhere that I was watching. This felt like a Halloween episode, and I don't necessarily think you need a Halloween episode in a show like Star Trek. It doesn't seem a necessary placement. So, to me, the best thing that I thought was the most believable was your character. So, your unnamed character in this episode gave the best performance, in my opinion.
Wow. I'm so humbled by that it leaves me speechless. The home run is this little black cat in different contexts you'd want a pet. But as the story goes on, it develops the roar of a panther or lion. It changes. Now, the audacity of changing a little meowing cat into rah, that's my home run.
I'm close to you on that one. I think the home run of the day goes to the kitty cat as well. I do love black cats. They're wonderful pets. This one was very sweet. It did not frighten me just because the shadow got big, or because at one point they had him walking through a shoebox. That was kind of fun and clever. But I was like, oh, kitty, it just made me happy. They found a cat. And I kind of try to look at how much animals have changed, through breeding and all that, and how slightly different this black cat looked in 1967 to the black cats that we see nowadays. It just kind of seemed it had a different shaped face. It was a little stumpier, a little smaller, and now they're a little leaner and usually longer faces or a rounder face. But anyway, just slightly different, because that's basically 60 generations of cat that have changed since then, because of breeding and all that stuff. But anyway, for me, it's the cat. It was cute. It made me happy. And whoever made the music obviously deserved it. I thought that was really good theme music. But here are some people that we like to name, and their names are, and we include a thank you when we name them. Thank you to Homer Frizzell, Dr. Marie Segal, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackmon-Tom, TJ, Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, Titus Mohler, Dr. Mohamed Noor, Tierney C. Dieckmann, Anil O, Polat, Joe Balsarotti, Mike Goo, and Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, My Live from Tokyo, the Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett, Henry Unger, Allyson Leach-Heid, Julie Manasfi, Jed Thompson, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, Glenn Iverson, Dave Gregory, Tim Baum, Chris Sternett, the Roddenberrys, Star Trek Las Vegas House Band, and of course, Jason Okun, and Greg K. Wickstrom out in Hawaii. All right, everybody, stick around. We've got the free-for-all up next, so hang out for that. It's going to be a blast. We'll be right back on The Seventh Rule. Hey, everybody, welcome back to The Seventh Rule. This is the free-for-all with Walter Cirroc, Melissa Longo. We've got Jason M. Okun. There's a cute kitty behind him. Dr. Susan V. Gruner is back. Thank goodness for that. Faith Howell is hanging out in Sausalito, looks like. Allyson Leach-Heid is wearing her cool Delta Quad from the Voyager documentary shirt. Grandpa One, a.k.a. Tim Baum, is back as well. What a party. What is that? Oh, is that a Catspaw shirt? What is that?
Caltech.
Oh, Caltech. Cool. Carrie Schwent also has a cat behind her. Homer Frizzell likes the New York Yankees. They're having a good year. And Chris McGee is the Dark Lord. He's got some things to tell us, I'll just bet. First things first, Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
I'm going to say 6.5.
Wow, 6.5. Dear. Does anybody else have any guesses of what it might be on IMDb without already checking? Having checked.
5.2.
Oh. Whoa. Did you say 5.2? Did I hear that?
Dude, that's harsh.
That's really hard.
I know the internet.
I'd go
1966.
I'd go 6.2.
6.2. Anybody else? All right. One of you has hit the nail on the head again. And today it's Jason M. Okun. It's a 6.2. 6.2. Jason's like, you guys, it's easy. Just check IMDb. Duh. No, very good, Jason M. Okun. Did we get any non-appearance mentions? I didn't catch anything. I don't know how that would have worked. I did catch some kind of or some sort of. Chris, was there more than one?
We had not one, but 3.
Whoa.
Which was the one you got?
I mean, I got Walter's. He said it's some kind of force
Of
field
course.
or something. What did he say? It's some kind of force field? Something like that?
Yeah.
Some kind of force field.
I said what?
It's some kind of force field, sir, but more believably.
Oh, but I didn't give you a rating on this episode.
Well, no. Well, it was a 6.2. Did you have a guess?
Yes.
Let's hear. What do you think it is?
Well, there's a speech I always wanted to do from the Crucible. I would first like to do that. And 4.9.
Oh,
Whoa.
wow.
Walter.
God, that was harsh.
Yeah.
Well, Walter, how many times did they have to spray your face when you were sweating?
I don't talk about such things in public.
Thank you. This is a family show. All right. Well, we got to get this train on the right track with Melissa Longo telling us what she enjoyed about this episode or did not enjoy. What do you think?
What do I think?
Oh, wait. So sorry. No, Chris has more kinds
right.
of some. I'm so sorry. I got lost.
Well, all right. I was going to save him for my turn, but so yeah. Earlier on, Kirk said, "Could it be exerting a force field of some kind that cuts into our sensor scan?" And McCoy afterwards said, at some point, said, "Could this be an Earth parallel development of some sort?"
Ooh. So they're kind of reversed in the sentence there. Thanks very much, Chris. All right. Sorry, Melissa. What do you got for us today?
Well, I'm going to try and keep my turn positive and and say that I really, really appreciate how the original series wasn't afraid to take risks. And this episode was definitely a risk, and that there was some good moments of it, and then some where I was like, okay, they're figuring it out. But I have to say that I really enjoyed the color palette in this episode. The lighting and the way it complemented the uniforms when they were on the planet, and I love the lighting of the original series. I also noticed that whether or not this was true for what was going on behind the scenes, I really enjoy watching the camaraderie of the crew of the Enterprise in these episodes, because I feel that camaraderie throughout every episode that I've watched. So, and that's solid. And I love the ensemble that has been built for this show, because I think everyone does a stellar job in bringing these stories to life and working with the material that they're given. So
great stuff. Thank you very much, Melissa Longo. Great job keeping it positive, by the way. You nailed it. Thank you for that. Jason M. Okun is here. Favorite episode? What do you think?
Oh, absolutely a favorite. Now, it's certainly not the best of the bunch, as we've heard, but we can certainly stay positive and look at things that are actually decent about it. I mean, if you check your brain at the door, this isn't as bad as it might seem. Mm-hmm. It certainly has probably a singular distinction of being the only sort of holiday-dedicated Star Trek episode. Whether you like it or not, they specifically wanted a Halloween episode, even though obviously it was shot first. It wasn't aired until closer to Halloween itself. And as Melissa said, it really is a wonderfully looking episode from the cinematography point of view. All the colors and the lighting is wonderful. So it's just a nice looking episode. And I think what makes this work, other than the lighting and actually the score is great too. It's going to be used and tracked in a lot of other episodes, and that's kind of gets a little to you because the music doesn't quite belong in those episodes, or it doesn't fit very well. But whatever you want to think of the script, whatever you want to think of sort of the silliness of it all, and not everything lands. I mean, the witches obviously didn't come out the way they were intended to. It does come off a little silly, for sure. But I think what works is, everybody looks to be committed to the material, which in and of itself, if people were just, mailing it in or phoning it in, it would have looked a lot worse, I think. This is probably the most serious Chekhov we'll see. It's the first time, obviously, Walter, you were doing the part, but it's probably the most serious Chekhov we'll see in the entire series. But again, it's not the worst. It's by far not the best. It's an attempt at something, and there's a long story behind the actual writing of the episode, what went into it, and why it came about, and we'll talk about that later. But in the end, it's I have a hard time sort of summarizing it all. It's watchable.
It's an episode.
Do you know what other work Robert Bloch had done?
Oh, he did What a Little Girl's Made Of is his first Star Trek script. And he had the old ones in there. He had the old ones in here. He borrowed from his own short stories to actually do the script.
Didn't they do a story that was transferred to motion pictures? Became a big success.
Yeah, he wrote the book Psycho.
Yep. He did write Psycho.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I was right.
You were.
Okay.
You were right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great stuff. Thank you very much, Jason M. Okun. Dr. Susan V. Gruner is here, and we are so glad she is. What do you think of this one?
Well, I agree with everything that Melissa and Jason said. I want to stress this was 1966, and I thought it was, I'm looking at it now, we think it's kind of hokey, but back in the day, I loved it. I thought it was a great Halloween episode. I was 10 years old when this episode came out. I have a funny story. First I'll say the ensemble cast comments that you have made. That is why there's nothing except Deep Space Nine that comes close, in my opinion, to the camaraderie behind the camera or in front of the camera for the original series. It hasn't been duplicated since the original series, except for, like I said, maybe Deep Space Nine. When I was 10 years old, I made those silly little feather things that were those creatures at the end. I made them for a craft class, and the teacher didn't know what they were. Pipe cleaners, blue feathers, and made this little thing that was supposed to be this creatures from Star Trek.
Sue, is there anything else you had for us?
No, it hurts me that it gets such low ratings. Again, it's 1966. There was nothing like it in 1966.
Mm-hmm.
And a
great stuff.
headline.
Thank you very much, Dr. Susan V. Gruner. Faith Howell is here hanging out in Sausalito, of course. What do you think of this one?
I don't hate it, but I definitely was surprised the rating is as high as it is on IMDb. I definitely would have gone a little lower. Yeah, I was texting Homer earlier as I was watching the episode, and I think my exact words were, "What did I just watch?" However, so definitely, I am that kid. I totally, if I had seen this as a child, which I don't know how I missed it, but I have no memory of those little bird creatures. I that's something I would do. I would have made those in school, and the teacher would have been like, "Okay, little child, you're weird." So, yeah, I don't hate it. I don't know that this is prime Star Trek. I really look for those messages, and I feel like if there was a message, it was definitely lost on me in this one. So, yeah. So, but I'm here. I want to hear what you guys have to say about it. So, take it away.
Thank you very much, Faith Howell. We're going to find some people are going to love this episode. You just watch. And that people is Allyson Leach-Heid. What do you think of this one?
So I had actually don't think I've ever seen this episode before. And I've watched through the original series multiple times, and I think I have slept through this episode every time. I read the description for it and I went, what? What is this? There are cats and witches? Like what? And so I made sure I had my lunch today. So I'm like, I'm going to do it during lunch. I'm not falling asleep because the music is beautiful and beautiful music puts me to sleep. I'm sorry. And this episode is completely bonkers. And it's a ton of fun to watch because it's bonkers. I mean, the cat, how they were cutting the cat from little to big and just going through was so much fun to watch. And I think just for Sylvia's costume changes when she's changing herself to be different women, this should have a higher rating. She had amazing costumes and she went for it like nobody's business. Like she was having the best time. And that's kind of how I feel about this episode. I love that we get our core group for the first time in this episode and everyone had something to do, even if it wasn't saying lines for Sulu, which is very sad. But he was still there the whole time. So everyone was together working through a problem, even if some of them had kind of been controlled. So I think this is like classic, truly catchy Star Trek. And so it was a ton of fun to watch. Is it great? No, but it is a lot of fun.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Allyson Leach-Heid. Never disappoints. Hey, Grandpa One is here, a.k.a. Tim Baum, finally back. It's a party now. What'd you think of this one?
I still remember watching this back in the 60s. Because I'm old. I didn't get it back then. I'm like, okay. But rewatching it yesterday, or the day before, one, it seemed like a bottle episode, but I loved the sets. Couple of things. When at the very first time when they got down and the witches are talking and it's like Kirk was going like, Spock, what do you think? That's really bad poetry. Could you expand on that? And then one of the things that struck me watching it, when the black cat jumped out, when they first went into the castle or whatever, the separate reactions from all the different characters, it was like everybody jumped, but Kirk was like, oh, he kind of smiled. He was amused. McCoy was like, hey, he was scared. And Spock was like going, what the hell was that? Very stoic. But I still remember watching it as a kid, like, okay, this is, I'm 6 years old. I don't have, it was a very cerebral episode. And then when they showed the Enterprise where they raised the temperature, and then Walter sitting there with sweat on his face, I'm sure they had to spray it all the time. It was like, back then I was like, I really didn't like the episode. Watching it now, I'm okay. This is actually, it. Like I said, it was like a bottle episode. It was very cerebral. So that's my take.
Good stuff. Thanks very much, Grandpa One, aka Tim Baum, floating out in space. All right, Carrie Schwent, aka Crafty Bear, is here. What's up? How you doing today?
I'm doing good. I actually, in a weird way, did kind of enjoy the episode. I'm kind of a sucker for any like Shakespeare adjacent sort of thing, because you got the castle, you've got the witches and their poetry. I kind of actually enjoyed their poetry, even with the delivery. It kind of made it a little more fun, at least for me. And plus, you've got a black cat, and I got my old black cat. Sadly, we lost him in 2020. He was almost 20, but had to include Waldo behind me, and I did a sticker and made him like super big because it's fun. I did enjoy Sylvia, especially her look. I liked the hair. I loved that flowy outfit. That, it occurred to me, might be fairly easy cosplay to potentially put together because it wouldn't require too much. Where was it? Oh yeah, a couple props to the stunt guy behind Homer. That fall was fantastic. It looked like it, the way he held his body rigid like that as he fell. I mean, it sure probably hurt, but it looked really, really good. And also props to Chekhov for standing up to just Sal like that when he's giving him a little bit of attitude. You stood up for yourself very well, Walter, and I am proud of you. And a couple of fun facts I found on IMDb and Memory Alpha. Where was I? I lost it. The voices of the little creatures at the end, the little noises that they're making, are apparently sounds that are made by newly hatched alligators calling for their mother.
Yeah,
I thought
they sound like lasers.
So cool. Such a fun little sound. And sadly, the actor who played behind Ryan there, who played Korab, died in a car accident about a month after the episode aired. I enjoyed his performance too, if I'm being honest. Got all of that. So as far, and the haiku sort of came to me a couple of hours ago, sort of from Sylvia's point of view. It's a little fun. Being a cat's fun. Being a woman's better. Love these sensations.
Ooh.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Carrie Schwent. All right, Homer Frizzell is out in New York. He lives in Walter Koenig's former apartment complex. What do you think of this one?
Yes, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it the first time I watched it too. It's not often that you see a big cat going through a castle and taking up the entire hallway there. And on this rewatch, I noticed that they played a little bit around with the camera. And I was thinking about it, like there's this kind of fisheye lens effect there. And I think that is always from Sylvia's point of view. And she looks at Korob a couple times like that, and she looks at Kirk as well. And I think that helps to bring home the fact that she's different. She sees things differently. And also, these aliens, and one way to explain the hokiness of not the episode, no, it explains a lot, I think. Is like, you got the castle, you got the cat, you got the witches. They weren't able to get like all of everything from the minds of the crew. They did the best they could with what they had. There were some surprises along the way. And I think that explains why things didn't look quite so authentic as they might have. So I'm going to give them a pass on that. And as Carrie mentioned, this guy here, that fall, I'm like, ow, that definitely did have to hurt. He is, I think he played Jackson. He is actually a guy who was a stuntman on the show as well. And I think he really nailed that. Walter, you are awesome, as usual. That's it for me.
Action Jackson.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. Homer Frizzell out in New York, #2 Yankees fan. All right, the Dark Lord, Chris McGee, is here. What do you think of this one?
Well, so as mentioned many times, this episode is kind of widely regarded as one of the worst in the series. And while I enjoyed it personally, I can understand why. I mean, while every episode of Star Trek requires a certain amount of willing suspension of disbelief, I think this one requires much more than most viewers are willing to part with, as Faith can attest to. Carrie had mentioned the tragic passing of Theo Marcuse, who played Korob just 1 month after the episode aired. I thought I would add that Antoinette Bauer, who played Sylvia, is still with us today at 91 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's probably already been stated in a previous segment that Kirk, after seeing the skeleton next to McCoy in the prison cell, stops calling him Bones for almost the rest of the episode and calls him Doc instead.
Mm-hmm.
So finally, the memorable quote of the episode. As Spock says, the cat is the most ruthless, most terrifying of animals. And as a cat owner, can confirm.
After
Thanks
owning
very
several
much.
cats, I concur.
Absolutely.
They are so cute, though. Come on. All right. So, Jake's final take. What do you think, Sirach? Final thoughts?
Final thoughts. I did like the necklace that was dangled in this episode that had little mini Enterprise on it. I was wondering where that little prop ended up in my own mind. So somebody has that necklace somewhere. Allyson seems to know the answer.
Smithsonian has it.
The Smithsonian has it. See, I knew
Smithsonian.
they got all the good stuff. Definitely wanted to see that. Mumbo jumbo was used in this episode. The words mumbo jumbo. I think they got some of that kind of speech out of the later versions of Star Trek because that seems a little bit dated in my opinion. The mumbo jumbo on there. Let's see, what else do we have here? Oh, I don't know if I like the title of the episode. Catspaw. Now, maybe there's more to it that I don't know. Catspaw was maybe used as a terminology in those days that I don't know. You know, maybe slang for something else.
It still is.
What is that? What is Catspaw?
It's using somebody else to further your cause. So get into your mind to make you do stuff that you wouldn't normally do. So
Catspaw was a one-act play. And it was be careful what you wish for. That's what it was about.
Yeah.
Somebody dies and they wish for them to come back, and they come back the way they look after they died. And then they wish for them to go away, and then something else horrible happens. So that's where the Catspaw comes from.
And, Chirac, it would be like all of a sudden you go and watch Liverpool play and cheer them on. And you're
Yeah.
like, I'd never do that, but I projected it on you.
All right. That left me even more confused. But no, I'm joking. But I do also say that music jumped out to me as well, as being something, that kind of carried the dull moments for me. There was moments there was no dialogue. Sometimes it was just people walking or some talking, and not talking, but just walking around. And the music helped carry those moments where I thought needed filling. So without that, it would have actually been less on my point scale. They went for a little cheap little joke there when they had the skeletons locked up in that cave there that Melissa has behind her in the backdrop. That skeleton, the whole bones doc joke, I thought was kind of slipped in there. That was just a little bit of something to entice you and entertain. That was a cute little insert there. Yeah, I wish that it was a little bit better in so many other ways. So it's hard for me to, extract the really good things that I liked out of it, because I felt like there was areas where it could have been a lot better and just left me kind of wanting more. But yeah, that's my final thing.
Walter, final thoughts on this episode?